The sea has always spoken in whispers, a language older than time itself. Each wave carries a secret, each tide a story untold. In the silence of dawn, sailors listen, hoping to catch a fragment of its truth. Legends say the ocean remembers everything that touches its surface. Some speak of treasures, some of lost souls, but one tale stands apart. It tells of a throne hidden deep below, carved from the breath of storms. The Tempest Throne, a seat said to hold the balance of calm and chaos. A throne not of power alone, but of listening, of knowing the heart of the sea. Poseidon, lord of the waters, feared and revered, walked between rage and calm. Yet even he, with trident in hand, felt the weight of endless tides. The ocean roared with voices too many for one god to hear. Still, the throne called to him, a whisper beneath crashing waves. It promised no crown, no chains, only understanding. And so begins a story not of conquest, but of discovery. A journey through depths unknown, where silence speaks louder than thunder. This is the tale of Poseidon, and the throne that changed the sea forever. The ocean does not shout, it whispers. Its voice moves through foam, wind, and the endless rhythm of tides. Every drop seems to hold a secret, waiting for someone to listen. Fishermen claim they hear names in the waves when the night is still. Sailors returning from distant lands speak of lullabies beneath storms. The sea does not forget, and it does not silence its memories. Ancient stories say the ocean keeps the truth hidden in its deepest chambers. But sometimes, when the stars bend low, it lets one secret rise to the surface. That secret is not of gold, not of ships swallowed whole. It is a legend older than Poseidon himself, passed through ripples and currents. It tells of a throne resting where light has never touched. A throne carved not by hands, but by the force of the sea itself. The Tempest Throne, they call it, born from the breath of storms. It is said that those who sit upon it hear the voices of every current, the voices of rivers that rush to the sea, the winds that shape the waves, the whispers of creatures unseen, from smallest shell to great leviathan. No mortal has ever touched it, for none could dive so deep. But the story has drifted through centuries, like driftwood upon water. Some say the throne controls storms, bending lightning and rain. Others claim it brings peace, calming waters with a single thought. But all agree. The throne listens, and it remembers. Poseidon himself had heard the tale many times, though never from mortal lips. The sea told it to him in moments of silence between storms. At first, he dismissed it, for he was already lord of the ocean. What need had he for another symbol, another seat of power? Yet the story lingered, like salt on the tongue, impossible to wash away. He began to notice the subtle tones of the waves around him. A storm would crash with fury, yet inside it was a note of sorrow. A calm sea stretched wide, but beneath lay murmurs of unrest. The ocean seemed to carry more voices than even he could command. And always, beneath it all, a single whisper. The throne awaits. This whisper did not come from wind or wave alone. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, patient, always near. Poseidon wondered if it was dream or truth. Still he listened, for gods are not immune to curiosity. The legend began to shift from story to call, from myth to summons. The sea itself seemed to breathe the words into him. Seek, and you shall find. On distant shores, mortals told tales of strange tides rising at night. Waves moved without storm, as if drawn by invisible hands. Lights glimmered beneath the surface, fading when touched. Even the dolphins sang different songs, guiding ships to unknown places, To Poseidon, these were signs, threads weaving toward one destiny. The throne was real, and it waited in the abyss. But why it waited and what it wished to reveal was a question unanswered. In the quietest hours, when the ocean was still as glass, Poseidon closed his eyes. He heard the world below, the sway of kelp, the hum of whales, the crack of icebergs. Each sound layered upon another, weaving a tapestry too vast to hold. He knew he must follow the call, though no path was clear. The ocean had whispered, and Poseidon would answer. Thus begins the journey, with a single question. What truth lies in the throne's silence? Poseidon was lord of the sea, yet even kings feel the weight of their crowns. His trident glimmered with power, but power does not silence longing. The ocean stretched without end, but his heart was never still. Storms obeyed him, waves bent to him, yet something remained unsettled. Each command felt like a shout over voices he could not fully hear. He ruled, but he wondered, was ruling the same as understanding? The sea shifted moods faster than wind, and he often matched its fury. His anger struck like thunder, yet afterward he felt hollow, unfulfilled. There was joy in calm waters, yet calm alone left him restless. The endless rhythm of tides echoed a truth he could not name. At night, when the moon cast silver paths upon waves, Poseidon listened. He listened not for storms or shipwrecks, but for what lay beneath. The ocean hummed with layers of sound, stories folded within currents. He sensed grief in breaking waves, laughter in bubbling streams, dreams in tides. But their meaning slipped away, like sand through immortal fingers. The god who shook mountains could not grasp the whisper of a drop. This restlessness grew with each passing season, gnawing like a tide within him. Olympus offered feasts, golden halls, songs, and eternal glory. Yet Poseidon often left, retreating to his domain of water and silence. Among the gods, he felt strong, but among the waves, he felt incomplete. Mortals prayed to him for safe passage, bounty, or mercy in storms. Their voices reached him, yet they were echoes compared to the ocean's depth. He knew mortals feared him, and fear was not the bond he desired. He wondered, could the ocean itself crave more than command and power? The sea was alive, vibrant, untamed, more than a stage for storms. Perhaps it longed to be understood as much as he did. This thought haunted him, soft yet insistent, like foam at the shore. He began to see patterns in the waves, threads woven like stories. No crash of surf was random. Each seemed part of a greater song. When dolphins leapt, he heard joy beyond simple play. When whales sang, he felt a wisdom older than his own reign. And in quiet lagoons, he sensed secrets waiting patiently to be heard. But his trident, mighty as it was, could not draw out their meaning. It was made for command, not communion, for rule, not reflection. Poseidon felt torn between the role he carried and the truth he sought. Even gods wrestle with doubts, though few would ever admit it. His heart grew restless, like a current trapped between rocks. He could stir tempests with a glance, but could not ease this storm inside. On nights when lightning flickered across the horizon, he would watch. He would wonder whether the sea's voice was testing him, calling him, not for battle, not for conquest, but for listening. The more he resisted, the louder the silence became. It pressed against him, gentle yet unyielding, like a tide that never stopped. He began to dream of a place deeper than he had ever swum, a place where silence spoke, where every current found harmony. He dreamed of the throne, though he had never seen it. It appeared not as stone or pearl, but as a pulse of light. In dreams, it shimmered at the center of a vast spiral of waves. It did not demand power. It invited patience. It did not roar. It whispered. Poseidon woke from these visions both unsettled and renewed. The longing within him was no longer a question, but a direction. The ocean was calling him to listen, not to command. His heart, restless as a storm, began to steady with this truth. For perhaps the throne was not meant to rule the sea. Perhaps it was meant to teach its ruler how to hear it. And so Poseidon stood at the edge of his domain, gazing deep. The waves whispered still, and this time he did not turn away. This was the beginning of his surrender, not to weakness, but to wonder. The sea was vast, yet Poseidon felt a single thread pulling through its endless expanse. One evening, as twilight bled into night, the waters grew strangely still. The horizon blurred, and the stars shone brighter, as if leaning closer. Beneath the silence came a sound, softer than any mortal could hear. It was not thunder, not the crash of waves, but a melody. A tone so pure it seemed to rise from the ocean's heart itself. Poseidon paused, trident in hand, sensing something beyond storms and tides. The song carried neither command nor plea, but invitation. He closed his eyes, and the melody wrapped around him like a tide. It rose and fell, weaving patterns that echoed across the deep. He had heard whale songs, the hum of currents, the whisper of reefs. But this voice was unlike them, older, deeper, steady as the earth itself. It called not to his power, but to his listening. It asked nothing, yet promised everything in return. Poseidon knew it was no mortal sound, no creature of flesh or fin. The melody came from the hidden places, the chambers where light never touched. It was the ocean itself, breathing through the depths. And within that breath, the throne whispered its presence once more. The Tempest Throne was not a myth, not a dream woven from foam. It was real, and its voice traveled through every current. Poseidon stood at the shore, yet felt as if he were already sinking. The song pressed against his chest, urging him below. It was not a command, but a beckoning, a promise of answers, if only he dared descend. The restless ache in his heart stirred, no longer silence, but rhythm. He turned from the sky and faced the waves, his domain made stranger. The sea no longer seemed his possession, but his teacher. Each note of the melody carried a weight of memory. He heard storms he had once unleashed, echoes returning as sighs. He heard calm seas where mortals prayed, their voices blending with tides. And woven between them, the throne's whisper, "Come deeper." He realized the ocean had been speaking all along, yet he had not truly heard. Now its call was clear, unavoidable, and unshakable. He stepped into the surf, and the water rose eagerly around him. It was warm, alive, pulsing with the same rhythm as the melody. Every ripple felt like a hand guiding him forward. Every current bent toward him, pointing the way. The melody deepened, no longer just sound, but vibration in his bones. It spread through him like lightning without fire, steady and bright. He wondered if this was how mortals felt when they prayed to him. Not fear, not command, but a quiet thread pulling toward faith. The call grew stronger as night deepened, waves shining with silver light. Even the stars above seemed to reflect in patterns on the water. He realized the song was not bound by space, but by connection. It linked surface and depth, storm and calm, God and sea. Poseidon's heart, long restless, began to steady in its rhythm. For the first time, he was not giving orders, but receiving them. The throne was not summoning him as master, but as student. And though he was a god, he felt humbled, smaller than the vast song. He knew knew he could no longer resist the pull of the deep. The ocean had spoken, and he had heard. The call of the deep was clear, and Poseidon would answer. His journey had begun, carried not by power, but by listening. The waves closed around him, their whispers now a chorus, and beneath it all, steady as eternity, the throne sang, "Come home." Poseidon stepped into the sea, and the waves welcomed him like an old friend. The water curled around his ankles, rising with each stride he took. The night sky dimmed behind him as he descended into the dark embrace. With each step, the shore faded, and silence replaced the world above. The ocean opened like a gate, vast and endless, yet familiar. He moved deeper, his form glowing faintly in the gathering shadows. The song from the deep guided him, pulsing like a beacon in his chest. Currents brushed past him like messengers, tugging gently toward unseen paths. Fish darted around him, scales glinting like shards of moonlight. Schools moved in unison, weaving patterns that mirrored the melody. The seaweed swayed, long strands reaching upward as though in reverence. Every shape, every shimmer, seemed to echo the call of the throne. Poseidon descended past coral gardens that glowed with hidden fire. Red and gold branches shimmered, alive with creatures small and curious. They scattered as he passed, leaving trails of light that faded behind him. He felt their eyes watching, not with fear, but with quiet knowing. For even the smallest beings sensed the journey unfolding before him. Deeper still, the light thinned, yet the melody grew stronger. It vibrated through stone and water, steady as a heartbeat. Strange creatures appeared, bodies glowing with their own inner lanterns. Jellyfish floated by, their tendrils painting arcs of silver in the dark. Tiny sparks flickered in the distance, as if stars had sunk beneath waves. Poseidon paused, marveling at the hidden beauty beneath his own domain. Though he had ruled these waters, he had never walked them as a guest. Each layer revealed a truth, not of power, but of wonder. He reached the twilight zone, where shadows swallowed shapes whole. Here the silence deepened, thick and pressing, like a blanket of stone. Yet the song did not waver. It pulsed with even greater clarity. Creatures of the abyss moved slowly, deliberate in their endless night. Some had eyes wide as lanterns, others had none at all. They drifted past Poseidon, unafraid, as though they knew his purpose. Their presence was not hostile, but guiding, as if placed to mark his way. Currents shifted around him, parting like curtains in a hidden theater. He felt himself entering a realm untouched by light or mortal gaze. It was a kingdom beneath his kingdom, older than Olympus, older than memory. Ridges of stone rose like cathedrals, carved by water over millennia. Deep sea vents glowed faintly, releasing streams of silver warmth. Their breath spiraled upward, carrying the melody higher still. Poseidon reached out, touching the current with his hand. It hummed against his palm, alive, ancient, and aware. He realized he was not moving through the sea alone. The sea itself was carrying him, guiding him to the hidden chamber. Every drop seemed to conspire in this journey, every tide aligned. The first time, Poseidon felt himself not as ruler, but as guest. He was being led, not by force, but by trust. The descent grew longer, time stretching like a forgotten dream. He no longer marked distance, only the rhythm of the melody. At last, a glow appeared far below, faint but undeniable. It pulsed with the same rhythm that had called him from the shore. The light grew, spreading into spirals, currents flowing like threads of silk. It formed a path, winding downward into a vast chamber. Poseidon slowed, awe filling his immortal heart. This was no cave, no hollow. It was a hall of the ocean itself. Columns of water rose, spinning in gentle arcs, glowing faintly within. The path of light led deeper still, toward the unknown. Poseidon knew he had crossed the threshold between myth and truth. The journey beneath had revealed not only the sea, but himself. The throne was near, and its call was no longer a whisper, but a song. Poseidon entered the glowing chamber, and silence wrapped around him like a cloak. The water here was still, untouched by currents or storms. Walls of living coral curved high above, glowing with soft hues of blue and gold. The chamber pulsed as though it were breathing, alive with a rhythm of its own. He stood in awe, for this was no ordinary place beneath the sea. It felt like the heart of the ocean, a sanctum hidden from gods and mortals alike. At the center, a light swirled, soft yet endless, beckoning him closer. It was not harsh or blinding, but warm, like a lantern in endless night. The glow formed into shapes, then dissolved, shifting like clouds across the sky. He took a step forward, his trident dimming in the presence of the light. It was not a place for weapons, nor for claims of dominion. Here, he felt less like a king and more like a wanderer. The melody that had guided him now became a chorus. It was not sung in words, but in vibrations that touched his soul. Each note carried stories, voices layered across time. Whispers of waves crashing on forgotten shores echoed in his mind. Songs of ancient mariners drifted like smoke across his thoughts. He heard laughter of children playing in tide pools long lost. He heard sorrow of ships swallowed whole, their cries fading into the deep. All of it was here, woven together into the song of the sea. Poseidon knelt, not in submission, but in reverence to what he felt. The chamber seemed to respond, its light growing brighter, more focused. Before him, shapes of thrones appeared, carved from current and storm. They shimmered and shifted, never solid, always changing. The throne of Tempest revealed itself not as stone, but as motion. It was a seat built from balance, woven from the threads of calm and chaos. He understood now why no mortal or god had ever claimed it. It could not be held, only shared, only listened to. The throne called not for rulers, but for guardians. He reached out, his hand brushing against the currents that formed its arms. A surge of energy flowed through him, not of power, but of connection. The ocean's voice poured into his being, flooding him with visions. He saw storms rising and falling, not as wrath, but as renewal. He saw calm seas stretching like mirrors, offering peace to weary souls. He saw creatures of the deep, from the smallest plankton to the great leviathans. All existed in balance, each tied to the throne's endless cycle. Poseidon's heart ached with wonder, for he realized his own limits. He had ruled the sea with command, but never with listening. The throne offered him no crown, no chains, only understanding. It whispered that the ocean was not his possession, but his kin. Each wave was a heartbeat, each tide a breath, each storm a thought. Poseidon bowed his head, the truth washing over him like surf on stone. He was not above the sea nor separate from it. He was part of it, a single note in its eternal song. The chamber shimmered, its light bending into patterns like woven cloth. It seemed to wait, patient and calm, for his decision. Would he sit upon the throne and accept its truth? Would he listen instead of rule, guard instead of claim? Poseidon hesitated, the weight of ages pressing on his shoulders. Yet the whispers grew gentle, urging, not commanding. He stepped forward, closer to the throne of Tempest, his heart unsteady. The moment of choice had come, not for conquest, but for harmony. In the stillness of the chamber, Poseidon felt the sea hold its breath. The throne gleamed, shifting with promise, waiting for him to listen. Poseidon stood before the shifting throne, his breath slow, his heart unsteady. The chamber was quiet, yet filled with countless whispers brushing against his mind. They did not speak as gods or mortals do, but as the sea itself. Each whisper carried a fragment of truth, old as the tides themselves. He hesitated, for the choice before him was not simple. The throne was not a gift to be taken, nor a weapon to be wielded. It was a bond, a vow, a path that could not be reversed. He gazed upon its form, always moving, never still like the sea it represented. If he sat, he would no longer rule in the way he once had. He would have to listen, to serve, to become part of the ocean's balance. For a god accustomed to command, this was no small surrender. Yet within him stirred a longing, quiet but undeniable. He had felt it on the surface, in the laughter of waves, in the calm of tides. A wish not to rule, but to belong. The whispers grew stronger, like waves overlapping, weaving a chorus. They told him of storms yet to come, of calm seas yet to rest. They spoke of lives depending on balance, of journeys waiting for guidance. The sea was vast, and even a god could not carry it alone. Poseidon stepped forward, his hand brushing against the throne once more. The current pulsed beneath his palm, not pushing, not pulling, simply waiting. The throne offered no command, only invitation. His trident dimmed completely, its glow fading into silence. It was as though it too recognized this was no place for authority. The chamber held its breath, waiting for his answer. Poseidon closed his eyes, letting the whispers wash over him. They spoke not to his power, but to his spirit. They asked not what he could rule, but what he could understand. Slowly he lowered himself, settling upon the throne of Tempest. The sea surged, yet not in violence, but in resonance. Currents whirled around him, weaving light and shadow into patterns of harmony. He felt the rhythm of the ocean flow through his chest like a second heartbeat. Visions spilled into him, vast and unending. He saw coastlines shaped by centuries of waves, each stone kissed by time. He saw children learning to swim, their joy echoing in ripples of sunlight. He saw storms sweeping ships off course, yet guiding them to new lands. He saw whales singing in the deep, their voices weaving into the great chorus. Every sight, every sound, every heartbeat belonged to the sea. And now, through the throne, it belonged to him as well. Not to command, but to cherish, to protect, to share. Tears welled in Poseidon's eyes, though he had never known such a thing. They did not fall, but mingled into the ocean itself, becoming part of its song. The throne glowed brighter, not with conquest, but with welcome. He was not its master, but its chosen listener. The ocean had found in him not a king, but a companion. The whispers faded into a single voice, calm and clear. Guard the balance. Listen. Belong. The chamber trembled, not with fear, but with joy. The sea itself seemed to exhale as though relieved at last. Poseidon sat taller, his spirit lighter, his heart steady. He had chosen not power, but harmony, and the sea embraced him for it. The throne of Tempest was no longer a mystery. It was a bond fulfilled, a promise sealed, a song unending. And Poseidon, for the first time in eternity, felt at home. Poseidon sat upon the throne of Tempest, the sea's song thrumming through his being. At first, there was calm, as though the ocean had paused to honor his choice. The silence was not empty, but alive, filled with expectancy. He felt the weight of countless eyes, not from mortals, but from the sea itself. The throne did not offer rest. It offered trial. Balance, after all, must be proven, not simply accepted. The first test rose from the horizon of his mind, carried on the tide. A storm gathered far above, unseen to mortals, but felt within his heart. Winds howled, waves mounted, currents twisted in chaotic dance. The throne whispered, "Do not command. Listen." Poseidon closed his eyes, letting the storm's voice reach him. It cried not in anger, but in confusion, a chorus out of tune. The winds clashed with waves, each striving to dominate, none willing to yield. He felt their struggle, raw and desperate, like children quarreling in the dark. Once, he would have silenced them with a stroke of his trident. But the throne held him steady, reminding him of his vow. He opened his spirit, offering the storm his ear, not his command. Slowly, the storm revealed its pain, hidden beneath its fury. It was not destruction it sought, but release. The ocean had been holding too tightly, tides refusing to bend. The winds strained against the water, aching for freedom to move. Together they had clashed, mistaking resistance for enmity. Poseidon whispered back, not with words, but with rhythm. He sent the beat of balance, steady as a heartbeat, into the chaos. The waves listened first, their peaks softening, their troughs deepening. Then the winds adjusted, bending with the current instead of against it. The storm calmed, not vanished, but reshaped into harmony. Waves rose and fell in rhythm, winds danced in measured steps. What had been turmoil became music, fierce yet ordered. Poseidon opened his eyes, the vision fading into the chamber's glow. The throne pulsed warmly, a sign of approval, a gentle reward. Balance was not about silencing force, but teaching it to sing. Poseidon breathed deeply, understanding more than he had before. The test was not over. The sea had endless lessons to share. Another vision stirred, this one gentler, quieter. A small village by the coast, children laughing in the shallows. The tide began to rise, creeping higher with each wave. Fishermen pulled their boats ashore, eyes wary of the swelling water. The villagers prayed, fearing a flood, their voices trembling with desperation. Poseidon felt their fear through the throne's song. The sea was not angry, only eager, yearning to touch the shore. Its affection was overwhelming, spilling too far, too fast. Again, the throne whispered, "Do not command, listen." He reached into the tide, feeling its intent. It did not mean harm. It simply longed to belong. Poseidon sent calm through the water, reminding it of rhythm. The tide responded, drawing back with grace, still touching, but gently. The villagers wept with relief, thanking the sea without knowing its guardian. Poseidon smiled softly, for he had learned another truth. Even love, unbridled, could cause fear if left unchecked. Balance meant guiding passion into harmony, not denying it. The vision faded, and the chamber stilled once more. Poseidon felt both weary and renewed, as though he had walked miles within himself. The throne of Tempest glowed faintly, steady as a heartbeat. The first test had been passed, not with power, but with patience. Yet deep within, Poseidon knew more trials awaited. The sea was vast, and balance was a song still being written. He rested his hand on the throne's arm, breathing in the silence. The ocean no longer felt distant, but close, like kin. And Poseidon, at last, had begun to learn the language of its heart. Poseidon sat in silence, the throne humming softly, like a lullaby carried by ancient waves. The chamber around him shimmered, shifting as though woven from tides and moonlight. He sensed the sea preparing its next lesson, a deeper current stirring beneath calm waters. The throne pulsed once, and a vision blossomed like foam upon the horizon of his mind. He found himself within coral cathedrals, arches rising in radiant hues, glowing like stained glass. The ocean floor glittered with fish-like jewels, darting between columns of light and shadow. It was beauty beyond mortal sight, a realm of color painted by time itself. Yet within this splendor, he felt unease, a faint discord humming beneath harmony. The corals whispered to him, their voices faint, brittle as shells in the tide. Once we thrived, once we grew strong, but now the balance falters. He touched the coral gently, sensing their struggle, a battle not against force, but neglect. The waters around them had grown too warm, too restless, too unclear. Poseidon closed his eyes, listening beyond their words, into the pulse of the ocean. The throne whispered again, "Do not command. Listen." He opened his spirit, and the truth flowed into him. The coral was not failing alone. It was part of a larger cycle, misaligned. Currents rushed too quickly, carrying nutrients away before life could take root. Creatures wandered far from their natural homes, seeking survival in distant seas. The harmony of the reef, once flawless, had fractured under unseen weight. Poseidon felt sorrow, for the sea's beauty was not invincible. Even its strongest marvels could falter when rhythm was broken. He asked the reef what it needed, not as a god, but as kin. The answer came as a whisper of patience. Time, balance, and space to breathe. Poseidon breathed deeply, lending the coral his stillness. He did not fix. He steadied, offering rhythm to the currents, like guiding hands. Slowly, the waters calmed. Nutrients lingered, light deepened, and life returned. The reef glowed brighter, voices lifting in joy, a song of renewal. Poseidon smiled softly, realizing the throne was showing him gentler lessons. Strength was not only in storms, but in nurturing small, fragile wonders. The vision shifted, carrying him upward, toward moonlit tides. He now saw a lone sailor, adrift on a broken raft. The man's eyes were weary, lips cracked, body weak from endless wandering. Yet his spirit sang with resilience, calling silently for hope. Poseidon felt the man's fear, not of the sea, but of being forgotten. The throne whispered again, "Do not command. Listen." He reached into the sailor's heart, hearing a story carried by salt and tears. The man longed for reunion, for land, for the embrace of kin. Not power, not wealth, but simply belonging. Poseidon did not calm the waters nor summon the winds. Instead, he nudged the current, ever so gently, guiding the raft. The sailor did not see him, but he felt the sea's kindness. Hope sparked, and with it, strength returned to his weary arms. Poseidon withdrew, letting the man find his way, aided but not carried. Balance again, help without control, guidance without dominion. The vision faded, leaving Poseidon back upon the glowing throne. The chamber thrummed with approval, like waves clapping against a welcoming shore. He leaned back, thoughtful, humbled by the lessons of fragility and compassion. The sea was not only storms and tides, but lives, small and vast alike. Every current touched another, every choice rippled outward. The throne's glow dimmed, but its warmth lingered in his chest. Poseidon knew the trials ahead would be harder, deeper, more demanding. But he also knew he was changing, learning, becoming more than a god of storms. He was becoming the listener of the sea's heart. And in that silence, he heard his next test calling from beyond the horizon. The chamber was quiet, yet Poseidon felt a stirring deep in the marrow of the sea. The throne pulsed once, its glow steady, its silence urging him to open his spirit again. He breathed slowly, bracing himself, knowing each trial peeled back another layer of truth. The water thickened around him, heavy with memory, and a vision unfolded like dawn. He stood within a canyon of shadows, where light could not easily reach. Here the ocean was not bright or playful, but solemn, filled with an ancient weight. From the depths, a song rose, not of joy, but of mourning. It was the song of whales, vast and sorrowful, echoing across eternity. Their voices stretched far, weaving tales of migration, loss, and longing. Poseidon listened, his heart tightened by their grief, vast as the sea itself. One whale drifted near, its eye immense, reflecting worlds within its gaze. It spoke without words, its presence heavy yet tender. Our path is broken. The stars no longer guide us as they once did. Poseidon felt their disorientation, the currents confused, the sky unsteady above them. For ages, whales had followed rhythm written in starlight and tide. Now, their path was lost, their journeys tangled by unseen change. The throne whispered softly, "Do not command. Listen." Poseidon opened himself, letting their voices flow through him like tide through stone. He heard songs layered upon songs, ancient melodies blurred by discord. The whales sought not rescue but clarity, a reminder of their forgotten way. Poseidon raised his hand, not in dominance, but in harmony. He hummed a note, deep and resonant, shaped from the core of the sea. The sound joined their song, weaving their voices into one great thread. Slowly, the confusion untangled, melodies aligned, a path emerging in the vast dark. The whales turned, their movements sure, their voices lifted in newfound unity. The canyon filled with music, vast enough to shake the very sea. Poseidon's chest swelled with awe, his spirit humbled by their ancient wisdom. Strength, he realized, could be found in joining voices, not silencing them. The vision shifted, carrying him further, into darker waters. He saw an undercurrent, silent and swift, pulling life away unnoticed. Fish vanished into its grasp, plankton dispersed, the balance quietly undone. It was no storm, no quake, but a whispering drain of strength. Poseidon leaned close, feeling its intent, its hunger to move unchecked. The throne urged again. Do not command. Listen. He followed the current to its source, a fracture within the ocean's floor. The rift was not malicious. It simply opened, unaware of its consequence. Its flow was relentless, taking without giving, imbalance born of indifference. Poseidon touched the water with patience, offering rhythm instead of force. He gave it direction, guiding its flow into streams that nurtured life. The rift did not close, but it learned to share, to balance its gift. The ocean brightened, life swirled anew, the silence replaced by vibrant pulse. Poseidon felt relief, but also humility, knowing even small fractures carried great weight. The vision faded, leaving him seated once more upon the glowing throne. The chamber hummed with quiet approval, like distant waves upon a shore. Poseidon bowed his head, his mind heavy with lessons gathered. The sea was vast, but each piece mattered, from whale song to hidden current. He realized balance was not a single act, but a ceaseless tending of harmony. The throne's glow dimmed, preparing him for what lay ahead. Poseidon exhaled, steady, ready, as the silence deepened into mystery once more. The chamber was hushed, its silence deeper than before, as if the sea held its breath. Poseidon rested his hands upon the throne, feeling its steady pulse in his veins. The trials had softened his heart, yet also sharpened his awareness of unseen threads. He closed his eyes, waiting, and the ocean unfolded another vision upon his spirit. This time, he found himself upon a coast of shifting sands. The shoreline stretched endlessly, waves chasing and retreating with playful rhythm. Children laughed, their voices like bells, running to meet the tide. But beneath the laughter, Poseidon felt unease, an imbalance stirring quietly. The sand began to crumble, retreating faster than the sea could replenish. Houses leaned, trees bent, the land itself slipping into the water's grasp. The people wept, fearful of losing their homes to the ever-hungry tide. Poseidon's instinct rose to command the sea to retreat. Yet the throne's whisper reminded him, "Do not command. Listen." He knelt, touching the sand, letting its story seep into his being. The grains spoke of exhaustion, worn thin by ceaseless tug of water and wind. They longed not for escape, but for balance, for a steady rhythm of give and take. Poseidon breathed deeply, offering the shore his patience. He shifted the tides with care, teaching them to dance more gently, with the sand. The waves slowed, lingering longer, leaving behind what they once took too quickly. The shoreline steadied, the houses stood firm, and laughter returned to the children. The people never knew why balance returned, but their joy filled the vision with light. Poseidon smiled, humbled again by the power of gentleness. The scene faded, replaced by a darker vision of endless night. Here, the deep sea groaned, heavy and restless. Poseidon saw creatures small and strange, glowing faintly in the eternal black. Their lights flickered uncertainly, as though threatened by an unseen weight. The water pressed down harder than it should, a crushing silence. Poseidon searched and found a chasm torn wide upon the seafloor. Currents rushed through it wildly, stirring chaos where calm once reigned. The creatures whispered in fear, their voices tiny yet aching for balance. The throne spoke once more. "Do not command. Listen." Poseidon leaned close, hearing the chasm's voice, deep and trembling. It had split open from strain, its strength tested by time. It did not seek destruction, only release from endless pressure. But its release came at cost, throwing life into turmoil. Poseidon placed his hand upon the flow, lending it rhythm. He did not close the wound, but guided its breath, steady and measured. The current slowed, becoming gentle streams, nurturing instead of scattering. The glowing creatures brightened, weaving light across the dark like constellations of the deep. The chasm hummed, no longer pained, but at peace with its place in the sea. Poseidon drew back, the vision dissolving into stillness. The chamber glowed faintly, echoing approval, calm as twilight. He rested heavily against the throne, heart steady, spirit deepened. The sea had shown him storms, tides, reefs, whales, and now land and abyss. Each trial spoke the same truth. Balance was not rule but rhythm. It was not a crown to wear, but a song to join. Poseidon realized he was no longer the same god who first sought the throne. He had become a listener, a guardian, a partner to the sea. The throne pulsed once more, brighter than before, preparing him for what awaited. Poseidon breathed deeply, ready for the next call, wherever it would take him. The chamber of the throne grew quiet, its glow dimming into a steady rhythm, like a final heartbeat. Poseidon sat still, his spirit heavy with the weight of all he had seen and learned. The ocean no longer roared in his mind. It whispered with clarity and calm. He breathed deeply, feeling as though the sea itself now moved with his chest. Every trial, every vision, had shaped him into more than he once believed. He was not simply a god of storms. but a guardian of balance and song. The throne pulsed once more, its voice gentle, almost like a farewell. You have listened. You have learned. Now you must rise. Poseidon touched the arm of the throne, reluctant yet grateful. He understood now. It was never meant to bind him forever. The throne was not a seat of power, but a mirror of the sea's heart. It had chosen him not to rule, but to guide, to remember, to tend. The chamber around him shimmered, fading like a dream at the break of dawn. The visions dissolved, the walls dissolved, until only the sea remained. Poseidon stood, no longer seated, but embraced by the ocean's endless expanse. The waves greeted him as kin, not as subjects, their voices calm and clear. He felt their gratitude, their trust, flowing into him like sunlight into water. Far above, the surface shimmered, where mortals waited unknowingly for calmer tides. The storms that once raged aimlessly now moved with rhythm, fierce but balanced. The reefs thrived, whales sang with certainty, tides kissed shores with patience. Even the darkest trenches hummed with quiet peace, their silence no longer heavy. Poseidon lifted his gaze to the horizon, his eyes reflecting its vast light. He no longer feared the endlessness of the ocean. It was no burden now. It was song, it was family, it was a story still being told. He carried its voices with him, every current, every creature, every whisper. The throne of Tempest faded into legend, its lesson engraved within him. No mortal would see it, no god would claim it, but its truth lived on. Balance was not an end, but a practice, an eternal dance of give and take. Poseidon smiled, for he had become part of that dance, at last, in harmony. He rose from the depths, his trident glowing not with wrath, but with calm light. When he surfaced, the world met him with skies washed in gold. The sea was calm, yet alive, waves rolling like verses in a hymn. Fishermen cast nets with ease, children played by the shore without fear. Sailors sang, their ships gliding smoothly, guided by winds that no longer warred. And though none saw him, all felt the difference, the quiet blessing of balance. Poseidon stood upon the water's surface, silent, his heart wide as the horizon. He did not need statues or prayers, for the sea itself was his temple. The ocean's breath was his hymn, its tide his eternal congregation. As the sun dipped low, painting the waters in crimson and silver, he turned. He walked back into the waves, vanishing into their embrace without a trace. The world continued, unaware of the god who listened, who learned, who loved. But the sea remembered, and its song carried his name in whispers of foam. Poseidon, the listener, the guardian, the keeper of the Tempest Throne. And so the tale ends, not in thunder or conquest, but in silence and song. A story of balance, eternal as the sea itself, flowing beyond time's reach.